Hi,
Hello.
Claire. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Wonderful. I hope that y'all's weather out in sorry, that's very southern of me. I hope your weather out on the Pacific coast is a little bit better than it is down here right now. So
Our weather is always the same. We're very sort of spoiled, it seems like. I mean, I think the only thing that changes is whether it's fire season or not.
yeah, yeah, that would be something we don't have to deal with down here as much, but everything else it seems. So
You're in Texas, right?
actually Mississippi, so not too far off. So
Okay.
Gulf Coast and all that good stuff. So a lot of heat, wet
Okay.
heat. So
Yeah, I can't handle the humidity. I don't know how you guys do it. I used to work, I had a client in Houston, and I just,
mm,
I would step outside and my glasses would fog up and I couldn't see anything. And then I would walk inside the air conditioning, it was like negative 100. I don't understand. I'm sweaty and now
oh
I'm
goodness.
freezing.
Oh goodness. I'm assuming you've not been to New Orleans then.
I have not. But if it's
Ah,
like that, maybe I won't go. I don't know. I'm a big
it
chicken.
well, it's a wonderful time, but yes, it is. It's in the swamp, so you know it is what it is. But thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show and just give us a little bit of insight into what you do. And I've read your book cover to cover.
Oh, thank you.
Love it. I was reading it and going through and thinking, wow, this is great for jujitsu. But then as a teacher, with all the trauma of students that I encountered, you've given me warning signs, and not necessarily warning signs, but just signs to be on the lookout for. And it's astounding how many I missed before you pointed them out. So,
Oh, and there's so many more.
mhm,
As soon as you finish writing a book, you're like, oh no, I need this chapter and that one. And
mhm,
but anyway, thank you so much for having me here with you today.
mhm,
I always need to start by giving a disclaimer. I don't know who's listening, and I don't want
mhm,
them to take anything that I say today as medical advice for them. And I mean, yeah, I'm covering my butt, but more so, I really want people to honor themselves.
mhm,
When I'm working with a client who has a trauma history, it is a very, very thoughtful, careful process of making decisions on when and what is right for them.
mhm,
And I just want people to respect themselves. Yes, this can be a really powerful healing tool at the right time and the right space.
mhm.
And so, whenever I'm working with clients or, even with friends, I have to accentuate chronically that everything is a choice. There's no, forcing. And I think that a lot of people, if they jump in too quick, there's this loyalty, right?
Yeah.
The pressure to kind of stay with the gang and you want to show up for everybody. And when you're dealing with trauma, you really kind of have to zone in on what's going to honor you in that process. So I need to
Mhm.
always start by saying that. And then I always want to start by saying too, if we're talking about trauma, that, this could be a trigger warning for people to
Right.
hear what I'm talking about today. So
Mhm,
again, same message. Please honor yourself. There's days that you want to listen to this, and there's days where you really shouldn't. And that's
mhm,
okay. I mean, that's the case for me too, even after all my training and my work on myself.
mhm.
So anyway, those two. And maybe I can tell you how this kind of all evolved for me.
Yeah,
Is that
that,
helpful? Okay,
that would be
so
wonderful.
I I work with a lot of adolescents and kids going off to college. And anyone who's seen the stats on that has seen that, yeah, a lot of assault takes place on
Mhm.
college campuses. And I'd really love for a lot of those kids to come back without an assault. So,
Yes.
right, yeah, I would like that very much. Don't return to me for that reason.
Mhm,
And as such, I chronically would investigate any sort of self-defense tools I could find. What's Krav Maga? What's this other standard self-defense? And you've been going to those for years, so that I would have at least three recommendations to make to my clients because I want them to have those tools before they go.
right.
Anyway, a friend of mine was like, hey, let's go check out this free self-defense seminar. And I'm like, okay, cool. And honestly, I didn't even know what jujitsu was at that time.
Mhm.
I'd watched the UFC, but I really didn't have insight as to what was going on in
Yeah.
it or who created it or anything. And just, was going to go with a friend, and the friend canceled on me last minute. So I actually contemplated not even going, but then I'm like, oh, just go, Anna. And so there I am, Henner and, Henner Gracie's in front of me. And I'm like, who's that? I don't know. And
Of all the gyms for you to walk into.
I just walk into that one, lucky me. So anyway, I proceed to have the most fun day I could have never imagined. I mean, 2.5, 3 hours straight of just giggles and laughs, and walking out of there that day, I was invigorated. I mean, I was just filled with energy, and I felt like, I had been to the Wonder Woman training on the
Yes.
island. I was, I knew trap and roll, and it, I was going to conquer the world.
Yes.
I was addicted immediately. And so I enrolled in their women's program, and I didn't want to do their combatives program at the same time because I wanted to kind of stay focused. But looking back, I think I probably could have done both. And for anybody who's listening that doesn't know what those are, at the school that I train at, they have a special program solely dedicated to women in preventing them from being abducted and raped. And they've really used law enforcement stats and all of their connections to kind of pick out the techniques that they feel are appropriate to help women stay safe. They're now expanding that to LGBTQ and all kinds of populations to try to keep them safe as well.
Right.
And then they have a street ready program for, the average street fight with a person who isn't, training in a lot of jujitsu, but wants to hit you because you're in the wrong parking spot or whatever insanity exists in our world right now. Right? So anyway, I focused on the women's program, and halfway through they added new curriculum. So it ended up taking me a little bit longer than it probably normally would have. And then I was really addicted at that point. I was now then training 10 hours a week in their combatives program because I could not get enough.
You got the bug bite. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I had it. it was so much fun. Just so much. I had no idea. And it really kind of struck me looking back now too, even as a woman, how, I was a tomboy when I was a kid, but I didn't wrestle. You know what I mean? We would play tag and we'd run around on our bikes and all kinds of things, but there wasn't a lot of like wrestling. There wasn't a lot of physical contact. And I think it's something that a lot of women struggle with when they're thinking of joining jujitsu because they're like, ooh, way too much body contact.
Right.
Right. But I know I try to explain to everybody. I mean, I picture two little kittens, and they're rolling around on the ground and kind of pawing at each other. And, that's kind of the playfulness that's happening here. Another friend of mine described it as like his dad would take him and he'd run at his dad and his dad would throw him onto the couch and he'd giggle, 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 and then throw him again. But it's that kind of energy. It doesn't, you don't even notice, I think, sometimes the physical contact if you're not focused in on it. You're just playing. So anyway, completely addicted. And then of course, combatives, actually, let me back up. So I'm in the women's program, and, I'm getting to the point where, the instructors are telling me you should probably test, you're ready. I take a pre-test with one of the instructors, no problem. Like, clean up a couple things, get 100%, like no problem. But then I realized that there's a specific instructor who's triggering me. And it actually took me a minute to even realize I was triggered. He would call up a more advanced student to demonstrate something in front of the class. And he called me up on a number of occasions, and I couldn't get away from him fast enough. I was not listening to what he was saying. I just became squirmy. I was sloppy. Like the technique was crap. I could not slow down. I did not want to be anywhere near him. And I'm trying to figure that out because, he had done absolutely nothing to me to cause any of that. And then, of course, it's one of those nights I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I'm, oh, wait a minute. He looks like somebody. I immediately whip out my phone. I'm digging up this guy's picture on Facebook and boom. And it was amazing to me after all the years I have spent in therapy as a patient, all the years I have trained to become a therapist, all the work that I've done on myself, all the helping I've helped others, that it was still there. And I felt all of the icky, sticky, I want to crawl under. I just yuck. I don't know that there's even good words to describe it. Right? Just really upset. And I was just kind of amazed. Wow, that's something all these years. Because I think it'd been 30 some odd years, 35 years since I had any contact with this person, which I think is a perfect demonstration. And I don't know if you want me to talk more about the brain later, but about how the limbic brain has absolutely no concept of what happened today, yesterday, or 30 years ago at all. And if there's an orange, and I can explain that later, stuck back there, it's gonna send off the alarm bells. So anyway, I reach out to them and I says, hey, I'm triggered. I'm sure you get this all the time. Like, how do you guys usually handle this? Because I was curious to see what they would do. Eve Gracie wrote me back. She's like, oh my gosh, Anna, what a privilege that you would even share this with me. I'll keep it confidential. Really what we need is for you to let us know what you need. And the person who was triggering me was Henner.
Goodness.
She's like, do you need more Henner? Do you need less Henner? Or do you need less energy?
Oh, goodness.
And I says, you know what? Let's just let Henner be Henner. I'm not even sure what I need. But then I decided, you know what? I want to test with him. Because then I know it will be a legit test.
Right.
Like, I know I will be triggered, even after all the exposure I had to him. So they're like, he doesn't usually test Pirkl, for 1,000 reasons, but all right, we'll do this. Anyway, so the day comes to test, and he walks in the room, and I'm immediately stop, block, frame, back up. Nettner's like, Anna, do you want to get like a sip of water or something? And I'm like, no, let's go.
Goodness.
Oh my God. I think I was already red, shaking. Yeah. I managed to pass the test, but I seriously got dinged a point off because of trap and roll.
Oh man.
I froze on trap and roll. And Henner's on top of me, shaking me. He's like, oh no, you know this. I tried punching him.
Yeah.
Wow. That's how triggered I was. Of course, Henner was not fazed by any of that, which again proves the validity of like the striking in a situation like this versus the jiu-jitsu, right?
Right.
Anyway, I managed to pass, but here's the moment that was amazing for me. So I leave there, I go outside, I open up my phone. I don't know why, I just immediately open up my phone and I pull the guy's picture up, and there was nothing.
Wow.
Nothing, absolutely no physical reaction whatsoever. It's like something came with a big eraser and erased everything from my body that was there before.
That's remarkable.
No icky, sticky, no wanting to crawl under a desk, nothing, no reaction whatsoever. And like he could hear me, I spoke to the phone. And I said to him, I was like, you can't hurt me anymore. But here's the kicker, and I forgive you. After years of working with clients on trying to get to that place of letting go, right, of the forgiveness piece, and all the books I read, I think I really struggled myself, and my clients were struggling, but I realized there's something tricky about forgiveness. If you feel like you're still under threat, how am I supposed to let it go? Right? I need to still stay on guard.
Right.
So, and forgiveness feels like letting go of the guard, right? It's so anyway, it was mind blowing, just incredible experience for me. And then of course, from that day forward, I was like, oh my God, I want this for everybody. I want all my clients to know about this. I want every friend to know about this. This is the most incredible experience I've ever had in my entire life. So then, I was watching videos, and I had drunk the Kool-Aid completely. Managed to run into this is another piece of it. I'm a marital family therapist, but I'm also a licensed advanced alcohol and drug abuse counselor and an art therapist. And I spent many years as the house therapist at a men's sober living. And the men's sober living was run by a man who was a black belt at Crohn's Gracie. And he had all the guys there training in jiu-jitsu because he felt it was a healing tool. And it was funny to me because I kind of ignored it for many years. I'm like, oh, okay, you have your little martial art thing. That's good. And then it wasn't even till actually I wasn't working there anymore. I got into it. But anyway, a lot of my clients from there would send me links and messages. And one of them sent me a link to Jamie Marich, who had made a video on her healing experience with jiu-jitsu. And I reached out to her and just said, oh my gosh, if you're ever doing anything with this, let me know. I want to support you, do anything I can. We had a great conversation. And then North Atlantic Books asked her to write a book on this. And she asked me if I would join her in writing it because she had gotten her pink belt and she was done. She really enjoyed the experience, and she still trains a little bit, but she doesn't have any goals to stay in anymore. And she wanted somebody on another coast involved in different schools who was still on the mats to help write the book. So anyway, it's a very long story to tell you how I got here.
Yes. But, and it's fascinating, just conversations I've had with people like yourself, and then people from it seems jiu-jitsu attracts people from all different, backgrounds, all different experiences. It really is, they say America's a melting pot, but it seems like the jiu-jitsu mats really are a melting pot, different experiences, different trauma, different issues that people are working through on a day-to-day basis. And I loved the subheadline of like facilitating embodied recovery. And I love that phrase. I'd heard it before with the creative arts, and I had heard it with yoga before, but I had never heard it in the context of jiu-jitsu. For those of us who may not be familiar with that term of embodied recovery, from a clinical definition, what does that mean?
Well, I think we'll just boil it down really simply. As anybody who trains in any sport knows, we have muscle memory. Right? We have bodily memory, separate even, sort of, we think of ourselves often as thinking beings from our head down. But oftentimes there's a lot of information coming the other direction,
right?
From our body up. And there is a story written, right? In these muscles, in our bones, in our cells across our body. And so oftentimes when people are asking me, well, what is this all about? And I'm like, look, there's a story that's written, and we need to rewrite it. Okay. We can't talk your body into thinking that it's safe. It needs to learn for itself that it can use tools or fight back. And one of the coolest things I love about jiu-jitsu specifically is that it really can work for the smaller, less athletic, like tiniest of person. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm sparring on the mats, the tiny, tiny little ladies are my worst people. I cannot get past their legs. I can't do anything. I mean, they're wiggly. I'm like,
they are. They gotta be.
I'm tall and lanky. So I'm like, oh my God, hold still. I can't do anything. Before I know it, they're like wrapped around my head. And I'm like, ah. But the big guys, I'm like, no, okay, now I know where you are. But anyway, I love it so much for that reason. And so, yeah, I mean, at the simplest of level, our muscles have memory, our body has memory. And, those memories are not always so great. And if we can have some corrective experiences in our body, then we can begin to rewrite those stories as well. Because talk therapy is a wonderful and important tool. But, as art therapists and dance therapists and movement therapists and all the rest of them know, there's much more to it than just our, what's sitting in between our skull. And I think, the medical world is starting to begin to understand that as well. I mean, you can see that in the adverse childhood experiences study by Kaiser, because they very much had that medical model of, we need to cure diabetes by making them lose weight. And then they figure out, oh boy, wait a minute. The majority of these people that are morbidly obese are sufferers from all kinds of wicked trauma. So we've got to pay attention to both. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know as a licensed therapist, and you talked a lot about I appreciated the green, yellow, orange, kind of red zones, those number scales, of knowing where it's safe to be operating from. Obviously, you don't want to be in the red zone, but a lot of people experiencing trauma, they're living in that red zone, right? From your experience for recommending jiu-jitsu or putting yourself maybe in the exact position you were in, is there a level of therapy that probably needs to be taking place before you probably step on the mats, I would assume?
So if I'm working with a client, and every therapist is different, they're going to have to find their own way. Okay. But this is what I am recommending based on my experiences as a clinician, is that we exhaust actually all of our regular tools first.
Okay.
I work with EMDR. I definitely do some cognitive behavioral work. I have psychodynamic, you name it. But one of the most important pieces to me is that we work a little bit with exposure therapy before we get in there as well. And we design a plan together, and I equip my clients with all kinds of emotion regulation tools, everything from grounding to progressive muscle relaxation to 5-4-3-2-1 to all kinds of acute techniques with breathing, and you name it. Mm-hmm. And we go through, I might give a client a technique 1 week and then have them practice it the whole week. And then I come back the next week, I give them another one. They practice the whole week. And we really go through a substantial toolbox, and they latch on to the ones that work better for them. Mm-hmm. Right. And really get to try on all different kinds of tools so that when they're upset, they know what they can do to get themselves calm again. And then, and only then do we start, even in the office, talking about, it may have nothing to do with jujitsu, just even talking about things that, get that number to rise, right? Where they're starting to feel upset. And just like going to the gym, you wouldn't go in and like pick up 300 pounds and then just hold it, for an hour.
Right.
You start with a low hanging fruit, 20, 50 pounds, you pick it up, you put it down. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we'll talk about something that's upsetting for them, maybe 5-10 minutes, just mm-hmm. enough to get the number up to 7. I don't want them at 8, 9, 10 if I can prevent it. But, right. We spend a lot of time getting that number down to the 4, 5, 6 area. Mm-hmm. And maybe I should have backed up and explained this to everybody who hasn't seen the book.
Right. Yes.
But the scale it's pretty much just like if you were walking into a hospital ER and they said, how much pain are you in? Mm-hmm. Okay. 0 is none at all. 10 is excruciating. And when I say pain, that could be anything in mental health. That's, that's I'm scared. I'm angry. I'm sad. I can't even get out of bed. I can't mm-hmm. brush my teeth. I'm not eating. 10. Right.
Right.
But anyway, the goal is that if we're working in the proper range, we're in that 4, 5, 6 where we are uncomfortable. Right. We're lifting the weight, mm-hmm. But not excruciating because, anybody can redline in an emergency, mm-hmm. but there's a price tag. Right. Yeah. There's a big price tag. And so you might actually be causing more damage. So anyway, after we've given them tools, we work on getting into that 4, 5, 6, and then stopping the conversation and using one of their favorite tools. Okay, Anna, help me with the grounding right now. Mm-hmm. Right. And so we practice that over and over and over again. So they feel like they can move the needle. They can move the number mm-hmm. up and down. They feel much more in charge of themselves. They can recognize what they look like when they're triggered. Are you mm-hmm. sweaty? Are you shaky? Do you dissociate? Do you become hypervigilant? Do you need to run out of the room? Right. And so mm-hmm. we study their individual characteristics of what they look like when they're triggered. And then, a great therapist can really help you, and they'll be asking lots of questions. They'll be watching you. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they make you safe enough to really just kind of be yourself in those situations and really learn. Mm-hmm. And so then, for some clients, they may need to, even after they've, built some tools and played with this in the office, of even talking about jujitsu, or even talking about the techniques or what the body contact might be like, right? These would be all mm-hmm. things that would be lifting weight just for a client, just to hear about that, mm-hmm. right? You could move to watching a video, right, together mm-hmm. and seeing what that was like. Mm-hmm. To then getting out and actually trying to sit and watch or visit a couple of different schools and see which one might work best for you. Of course, mm-hmm. I'm talking from a privileged place of living in LA, where there's a school in every corner. Right. Unfortunately, a lot of people in America don't have one in every corner. So that may be visiting a school for them. Mm-hmm. But then I've got clients that, really for me, my experience is the hardest part after that is just being able to walk through the door.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of work with them just being in the parking lot. Mm. Okay. And they may even have to visit that parking lot 2 or 3, 4, 5 times and walk up to the door and then walk back. And what we're doing in that is we are reminding them they have a choice. They always have a choice. They can mm-hmm. walk up and walk back. As a matter of fact, that's the assignment. That's the only assignment. Just walk up to the door and walk back. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now walk inside, but then walk out. Mm-hmm. If I have a good relationship as a therapist with the school, mm-hmm. and they know in advance, then I might be sending a client who, right, and with the client's written permission that I talk to them, they'll understand why this client is walking in and out. And, then I can have conversations with the school as to when this works best and, mm-hmm. All those things. We're trying to have as good experience as possible for everybody, the school and the person. But anyway, You can see it's a very systematic thing. Mm-hmm. And then once they get on the mats, they tend to not need anything else in my experience. but I have been there per client's request to just, kind of check in with them. And we would set up like, little cues like, I'm going to look over at them because I'm kind of not staring them in their eyes. But if I'm staring at them in their eyes, that's me asking what their number is. And they literally just put fingers on the floor showing me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And because sometimes if we're triggered and we go into a pre-verbal state, they may not even have the words to say stop. Right. And so I'm looking at them, and if they're shaky or whatever, I automatically can say, hey, let's go get a sip of water together. Or, hey, let's walk in and out the front door for a second. I need some fresh air. Would you mind coming with me? Right. And I use myself a lot as sort of a cover. And we do different things depending on how much confidentiality they need, because I'm not trying to, out them, because a lot of people know that I'm a therapist. And so, yeah, there's just 1,000 ways you can see how you could customize a jujitsu experience. Even if you can't afford private lessons, right? With the correct school, they're going to be okay, hopefully, with somebody needing to walk out. Right. So, really, I feel like that's the biggest thing. It's just over and over and over again, reinforcing that they have choice at every step of the way, because the way trauma is done, there isn't any choice.
Right.
Right. And so going, hey, no, we can stop now if you like. Right. Which is very contrary to a lot of bad experiences about, no, you started this and now you need to finish.
Yeah. Not very conducive to healing. Yeah. I know I was, reading this, and as somebody who's kind of helped at our gym and structuring some classes and stuff, I'm constantly thinking of how can we implement this? How can we make it, which is why I love you have each section in the book kind of has it for the trauma survivor, the practitioner for, so it's just a really great kind of breakdown, and it gives you good tools and good starting points. And I think that's something, because mental health in general is very important to me and my journey in jiu-jitsu of, it gave me a sense of choice of how can I best manage, this situation, and jiu-jitsu helped me manage that. And so I guess this is just an existential question of, is there a way, do you think that there jiu-jitsu schools across could there eventually be a partnership with clinicians and jiu-jitsu schools across the country? Do you know if any gyms that are kind of national that are maybe going that way, or is this just something way like down the line of a hope and a goal?
So, yes and no. I tell you what, a majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, when I tell a fellow clinician what I have written about, they give me a head tilt, just like the confused dog. Like, excuse me, what? I mean, the UFC really has given jiu-jitsu quite the reputation.
Yeah.
Which is so unfortunate, because I feel like a lot of them would be more likely to say, oh, yeah, no, do karate, but not jiu-jitsu, or something to that effect. But there really is an uphill battle here for all of us to kind of undo the stigma. And I mean, I will let you know this, the school that I train at, Gracie University, which does have centers, across the globe.
Right.
They very much encourage their instructors to partner with fellow therapists in the community, and that they, know who they are. And if they are having, for example, their seminar, which they often kick off the women's program with this 2.5, 3 hour free seminar, that they encourage them to have a clinician there that day to respond to anybody that's triggered day one.
Okay.
And I oftentimes, I volunteer myself. I don't get paid. And I encourage therapists not to claim payment for that. It is a way to potentially get some client referrals, right? If somebody is triggered. I often find that I've been doing that for years myself and volunteering that first day, and have never had anybody triggered until this last event. Years and years and years of volunteering at their events. And it was just this very last one in February that I had the first person run up to me in tears. So I was like, yay, I can be helpful. Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah.
Here,
Right.
let's go stand over here in the hallway and feel our feet on the ground and take
Mhm.
breaths together and, all that good stuff. But yes, there are more gyms, I think, excited about this than there are clinicians.
Okay.
I think the clinicians have a healthy skepticism.
Hmm.
Um, I say healthy because they should. There's a lot of stuff that's happening right now in our world that, can go one way or another. I'm not anti, for example, shrooms. But, now everybody is going to do shroom healing.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, everybody asked me what's my opinion on that because I'm a LADAC. And I says, look, it's too soon for me to say anything. I haven't seen a ton of research yet, but I
Hmm.
do find it interesting that it's all my addicts that are eager to try this. Right? I just find that a little funny.
Hmm.
So, I feel like a lot of clinicians look at this and they're like, yeah, let me see the research first.
Hmm.
And if they're not training, it's really scary for them, right? They have
Right.
no idea. They have all these preconceived notions. And
Hmm.
some of the stuff I get into in the book too is there is a difference between competitive gyms, non-competitive gyms, or gyms that see
Hmm.
themselves as both. And
Hmm.
I'm not anti-competitive at all. I
Hmm.
love the competitive world. I listen to one of your other podcasts and just love hearing your description of how you compete, and I love seeing women go do this thing. Um, but a trauma survivor, I think, really needs to consider carefully what that all means to them and for
Right.
what reason, when, and why. And I
Hmm.
also believe, too, that there can be some unhealthiness in some of those competitive gyms if there's a little too much bravado, or we just have a black belt who doesn't know anything actually about being a teacher, but now they're a teacher because they're a black belt,
Yeah.
right? And
Hmm.
if, you know, I have a 30-point checklist that I ask trauma survivors to review in going to visit schools. And then I have actually several checklists after that for what I would like to see in the future.
Hmm.
Um, and if somebody's listening to this right now, I would let them know that my top three things on the top of that list of what I would want them to look for in a school would be safety first. And one of the ways that you would know that a school is concerned with your safety is that when they're teaching a technique, you will literally hear the words, keep your partner safe by, right?
Hmm.
And tap early, and don't be eager to submit, and, right? And there's a lot of,
Hmm.
I highlight a lot of that in the book. The next thing that I feel is important is no sparring day one.
Hmm.
I don't even know how that would happen in a really healthy way. I'm going to be like, okay, let's play chess, you and I, but I'm not going to tell you how the characters move here. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're gonna smoke me pretty quick. Yeah.
Right. And I don't know that that would be a healing experience for someone.
Because you're
So
powerless again.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Powerless again. And you don't even know, necessarily when to tap, right?
Hmm.
I remember when I got into master cycle and people started grabbing at my feet, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't know what you're doing with my foot, but please stop it. And I make it clear, I don't know any foot locks yet. I don't know heel locks. I don't know any of that stuff. Like, please just go super slow. And we do this thing at my school too. It's especially on some days of the week where we just catch and release. So
Yeah.
you get to a position, you catch what would have been a submission, and then you just let it go. Like, you
Hmm.
got it, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
let it go. So anyway, those two, and then the other one is that they separate street from sport.
Hmm.
So, I'm a big fan of people learning self-defense through jujitsu,
Hmm.
but I'm super crystal clear in Master Cycle. There's a good chunk of the techniques, and I'm leaving myself open to punches and kicks.
Right.
And honestly, as much as I love my school, and I really, really do, they don't always highlight the difference. I have to really think it
Yeah.
out. And it's something that I'm always doing with my partners. I just love fight sim days for that reason. And I'm like, ooh, I get to, let you know that you're open for punches right now.
Yeah.
So,
I think
anyway,
that's a really great point on the separating the sport from competitive jujitsu. That's the word. Because I got to be honest, I love my original gym, the gym I'm at now, but we don't differentiate, and we can do all this fun stuff, and it looks really cool, but oh crap, I'm gonna get kicked in the face or punched in the face. Yeah. So I think you said fight sim days. So those are days where do you glove up? I mean, you just tap them. Yeah. What do you do?
We glove up. And, typically we're not trying to, go 100% punches. We're just, we tap, and it's what we call, reflex development day. And I didn't get to explain that before. So, our combatives program, it's not mine. My school, Gracie University's combatives program, is a program that's basically, in the average street fight, right? What you might get attacked with. So, and so on those days that we're doing that, we try to stick more to that curriculum. Okay. So stuff that you would see from the average person trying to hurt you out on the street using whatever they've got. And so, we glove up and we'll give each other a little punch here and there to let them know they're open. But usually it's not that hard. Although I will let you know, there was a day I was training with one of my partners, and I love him to death. One of our instructors came over, and I was sparring with a woman who actually has limited vision. And he's like, "Do you know who you're sparring with? That's Anna." He's like, "Let her have it." And so she did, and I was like, "Ah!" She really did, and I was like, I was getting wailed on pretty good.
Oh, geez.
But anyway, that was really silliness. So it's, and of course, that's another thing they teach us a lot in our school is how to communicate, to ask for what you need, and what you want, how to talk about, injuries.
Oh, goodness.
With each other. And, hey, I'm just going for a flow roll today. I'm going at 50%, or, hey, would you mind sparring with one arm?
Yeah.
And legs and not letting each other in, or, or whatever. And they normalize it pretty much every single day. I mean, before we jump into sparring after technique, they will go, "Hey, talk to each other. It's okay." And then they'll warn us too. If a belt ceremony is coming up, they're like, "Don't be trying to impress us by going 200% and hurting each other." And, as a matter of fact, all that it will do is get you on the blacklist, on the bad list. So, there's a lot of people, I think, really interested in this and trying to get more information and shape their gyms and shape their teaching. I gave a 6-hour talk to a recovery facility in Prince Edward Island, Canada, because they are literally, as part of their recovery program, where they have lots of things. I mean, they've got EMDR, they've got horses, they have it all. They're adding now, just for their veterans, I think just female veterans actually is where they're starting a jiu-jitsu healing program. And so, I took the instructors and the clinicians through a very long training on my thoughts on how they should create that and what they need to look out for. So that's happening. And I want to say there's 4 other places I'm talking to right now. And I think 2 or 3 other presentations I've given already as well. And I created this big sort of workbook that I can hand over to people. So, they can go straight to the page of when a student is triggered, how do you respond? Right. And I am definitely not expecting instructors to be therapists. I don't, as a matter of fact, want them to do. But there's little things that I've discovered over many years of training. So, for example, right now, you and I are looking each other straight in the face. And I am blocking your exit if we're in the same space. Right. And again, a lot of trauma is done in a way where a person feels trapped. So if I'm coming up to you to say, "Hey, how's your training going?" Right? I'm not even to say, "Oh my God, are you okay? You're crying." I'm gonna just go, "Hey, how are things going over here?" And I will actually position my body kitty corner, so that my shoulder is closer to, but my other shoulder is angled away. And in that process, I mean, if I'm holding out my arms, I am literally holding space for your escape. Right. I mean, we talk all the time about what is, to hold space for somebody else. I mean, and when you turn your body like that, you literally can hold their exit. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And so for those of us who are, it is an audio podcast, but she's angling herself and she's kind of facing almost, I don't want to say perpendicular, but she is creating kind of like this L or V shape to allow, if I needed to leave, she's shielding me so that I can leave. if that makes auditory sense. So
it's a hard thing to describe without a visual. Yeah, kind of like a V, right? So I'm angled off to the side. I'm also, I'm not staring them down, and there's all kinds of tips and, language things. Again, in our language, we can trap somebody, right? By telling them what they should do or how they should feel, or, you're safe now. According to who?
Right.
Right. No. And by the way, we as clinicians are evolving too, and even the word safe, we're kind of tentative with. We like now to say safe enough. Are you feeling safe enough? Like, we're trying to get to a place where it's safe enough, because the world is not necessarily safe.
Right.
Right. So we want to be safe enough that, we can breathe and not be hypervigilant, kind of thing. So it's been a really amazing experience, giving some of these trainings. And I find that oftentimes just talking about the brain gets people really excited. They're like, oh my gosh, that's why. Oh my God, I'm not crazy. That's what happened to me. And it's really empowering for people to hear more about that. So,
for sure. I know you keep bringing up hypervigilance. I'm an English teacher, and so I'm constantly, I don't know why I've used myself like this, but I read like 7 books at the same time. And so I just finished reading Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear. And so he was talking all about hypervigilance and distinguishing worry from, immediate, like somebody's going to kill you right now. Fear, and talking about how when we're hypervigilant, it's just like you turn on the radio up so loud you can't hear anything else but just that loud roaring noise. And you're hypervigilant, but it's almost like you can't see anything at the same time. You're looking at everything and you can't zero in on the thing that's the immediate problem in a way. Can you talk a little bit about hypervigilance and, of course, the brain, and like why, that's just something our brains do, it seems, in this world of terror at times.
It's like my favorite thing in the world to talk about. Yes, absolutely. So for example, I just read something a while ago and I loved this description, for a woman who's been raped, like she's walking down a street and a man is walking towards her. That man is a potential rapist.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, from that day forward, right, it's a protective, healthy function that our brain does, and going, no, I've categorized this situation. It's not okay. So, all of our brains are built to do that. If I got, bit by a dog, I might slow down on trying to pet a dog after that.
Yeah.
And here's the challenge. So our brains are very, very sophisticated, and yet they're not. We have this lovely section of the brain called the limbic brain. And, we could call it monkey brain, animal brain. We've got a lot of nicknames for it. But really, unfortunately, it is the part of the brain that takes in all of the information. So anything that you're sensing right now, your smell, your taste, your touch, your hearing, anything that you're sensing is coming in through that section of the brain. And it is coding it. It has 2 boxes, pleasure or threat. That's it. Just 2. And it's funny, as therapists, we're chronically talking to our clients about don't do black and white thinking. Right? Yet this brain only has black and white thinking, pleasure, threat. And if it's pleasure or neutral, right, it's not a big deal. Brain functions normally, and the frontal lobe is turned on, and whatever experience that is gets kind of filed away, up here, in our frontal lobe. If it's threat, all kinds of other things take place. So, for example, right now, if I happen to punch you in the nose and you were eating an orange, okay, your brain would take in everything in this situation right now and a bunch of puzzle pieces. I mean, literally picture puzzle pieces, okay? So you might notice my curly hair. That would be a puzzle piece. The orange you were eating, puzzle piece, right? The sensation of the headphones that you have on, puzzle piece, all just separate puzzle pieces, not together. Okay, so all those puzzle pieces are now coming into this section of the brain. And what you need to understand about this section of the brain is it needs to connect to the frontal lobe to put the puzzle pieces together. If it gets activated and really thinks this is a threat, there's going to be a traffic jam. Like, I don't know what your major highway is, but here in the 405, 5 o'clock, there's going to be a traffic jam up to the frontal lobe. And things are going to get stuck and never make it up there to get filed. So the orange the sensation of the orange might actually stay in your limbic brain, that this is coded as a threat. Now you are sitting in a room 20 years later, somebody's eating an orange. And all of a sudden your shoulders are rising and you don't feel good and you're nauseous and your nose starts hurting and you need to get out of there, but you have no idea why. You don't even know it's the orange because that part of the brain doesn't think. It doesn't speak. It doesn't have any language either. Okay. Our ability to speak exists up in the frontal lobe. I mean, it doesn't put the story together. It's just floating pieces, right? Orange is a threat. And in addition, you know, in that moment where I punched you, to make things even worse, this section of the brain up here that we need, the frontal lobe, to be able to put that puzzle together, actually can lose blood flow to some degree. It has literally gone offline. Okay, so talk about the ability to overreact, right? Like, you know, I'm sitting in the room and there's an orange. Now, and this is just me punching you in the face. I mean, what if it was worse than that? You know, I mean, and imagine how those things are now charged. They are literally electrically charged. The orange is electrically charged. My curly hair. Oh my gosh, look out for the curly hair people. They're out to get you. Right? Everything is coded. And so the cool thing is we have these amazing tools out there. EMDR, for example, is just absolutely one of my favorite. And through the bilateral stim, you know, we start to get access to this. Sometimes they'll start traveling up. Okay. So that's the good news, right? The bad news is it doesn't always get, you know, below the neck as well as we want it to, which is why then I like to have the somatic experiences, the corrective experiences, right? So, you know, I give this example oftentimes when, you know, I have the doctors giving me the head tilt, Jiu-jitsu? Help with trauma? And I says, look, you got this woman. She was held down on the ground, wrists pinned while she was being assaulted, right? Now she's at jiu-jitsu. She's held down, same exact position. Guys holding her down, pinning her wrists on the ground, right? Now she flips this guy off of her to her advantage over and over and over and over again. And the story in her wrists and the weight and the sensation or anything that she's getting from this big guy is being rewritten. I am safe enough. I can survive this. I can interrupt it. One of the things I've done with a few of my clients is we have outlined their entire trauma story from beginning to end. Okay. So, you know, everything that happened before leading up to it, even if there were like an intrusive moments. So oftentimes, you know, for example, if this is somebody who you know, the fraternity boy, that everybody loves, there's moments leading up to an assault where they start to intrude, right? They're touching a little more than they should. They think they can just come over and grab you or hug you and not let go when you want to, right? And so all of these moments leading up to the assault, through the assault, we will break each segment down. And we will match a jiu-jitsu technique to it. So, for example, at my school, we have a creepy hug technique, right? So they're going for a frontal hug, right? You know, we've got lots of options. You like post your hand out and offer them a hand. I like handshakes, right? Or if you don't want to make that big a scene, like, or you feel good enough giving a side hug, right? You can, you know, press against their chest, lead them that way, swim under their arm, pop your shoulder up so that they can't get their arm around your waist. Right. So things like that. So you are in charge of the physical contact. Anyway, what I love about it is, again, we're answering each step of the way. You have an answer now. But we're also very, 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 very careful not to shame in this process. There's, you know, absolutely, there's nothing you should have done differently in the past, or, you know, you can never, it's not your fault this assault happened, you know, and we're just extraordinarily careful about, you know, any weird victim blaming crap that's out there. So anyway, limbic brain is limited, and people often love hearing about that. And so, you know, when we're triggered, that can show up, you know, the orange happens in the room. Now we're triggered. And depending on the individual, they can show up in 1,000 different ways. And that's, you know, on some of my lists, you know, some people might start shaking, crying. I mean, those are real visible, but some other people will start to dissociate, and that's harder to spot. Right. And that's when they're starting to, like, not be able to understand what you're saying, right? Or the technique is getting harder to understand. Oh, come on, Anna, I know how you know how to do this. This is easy. This is just, baseball choke. Come on, what's happening? Right. And they're just not there.
Right.
They've gone somewhere else. And, I'll give you one that even a lot of clinicians don't know about. There's a thing called hypervigilant hearing. So when I grew up, in my household, knew that the tone of your voice was much more important than the content of what you were saying.
Yeah.
And so my brain would not care really what you were saying and more so just tuned into the tone of your voice, which then can very much make teachers sound like wah, 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 like the Charles Brown teacher, right? And I had to work really hard on myself to make sure I'm feeling safe enough, which often means, in prior situations, I've got to have my back to the wall. I need to know where my exits are. I need nobody in my way of the exit. I can't have people around me making all kinds of noise, because if the person over here opens a bag of chips, I'm going to have to study what that is for the next 10 minutes and make sure it was just a bag of chips and, not something else coming at me sideways. And then by the time I actually calm myself down enough to get to back to what the teacher's saying, I've missed 10, 15 minutes of whatever the teaching was.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then we get labeled with all kinds of things like, lazy, distracted, ADHD, right?
Yeah.
What a mess, right? I oftentimes have to remind teachers over and over again, just because somebody isn't hearing your voice or looks distracted or is looking around the room or whatever, it means no disrespect to you. They literally might not be able to control that. They could be triggered, or they might actually have ADHD.
Also possibility. Yeah.
Right. Either way, you coming across authoritarian and scolding is probably not going to make them feel safe enough to build different skills. So anyway, I just love all the interest in this topic. A friend of mine's a minister, and his congregation actually hired me to do a trauma-informed training for his leaders of his church.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I know, it just blew me away. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yes.
I just love that you guys are caring about that. So, but I also feel like too, whenever we're talking about this, I feel like with a lot of jiu-jitsu instructors, they're on board. They're like, oh my God, of course, and they're thinking a lot about the veterans, not just, there is no just, but, I think a lot of times when we think of trauma and we're talking about women who've been raped, but there also is the, first responders and veterans and, their trauma and the horrific things they've seen that, right. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. You did. Absolutely. And I think that's something that, kind of as a teacher and in the jiu-jitsu world too, you brought up in the book a lot about curriculum and like getting that out there so they can, and I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, lesson plans. They want all my lesson plans in by Monday. So that, it's like, oh crap, not this. No, but that actually gives them, it's kind of very similar. And I don't know why more teachers and more professors or more teachers, coaches don't do that. Get their what's going to be on the agenda this week, so that if it is a situation where they haven't quite gotten up to the level of where they can be comfortable if somebody's in mount on them or something like that, okay, I might need to just watch this class, because that would be something that I can imagine that would be incredibly upsetting if that was a situation you had not prepared for, you're thrust into it. Again, you feel like the power of choice has been taken away from you, and it could be re-traumatizing. And, that's certainly not what you would want to do as a jiu-jitsu instructor. There we are. Have you run into, I know you've been in the one main gym, but have you seen like other gyms and other gym schools, cultures try to adopt more of getting that kind of information out there? Or is it just, what your school does and that's kind of it?
So when I started writing this book, I had plans. I've got, of course, through all of the guys at the Sober Living, contacts at all kinds of amazing schools across the South Bay. And I was very excited to go train and try them all out. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I was like, oh no. Anyway, and then my dad was needing me. He was dying of a horrible disease, and I spent 2 years having to take really good care of him, which kept me from training, because if I brought home even a cold to him, let alone COVID, I would have killed him.
Yeah.
So I just got back to the mats this past January, and I was I wanted to sort of like get my muscle memory going again. And I went back to combatives. I'm still going back to combatives to remember everything. And I was just about ready to go out and go, do the things I promised I was going to do. And then the whole thing came out with the trial of the guy who got paralyzed and angry. And I don't know why BJJE or something.com picked the picture of me shaking Henner's hand.
Oh my gosh, that was you. Oh, yeah,
it was. And then it was funny because it was that week. I was literally going to go out, and I'm like, I think I'll just, hang tight for a minute, because I can imagine people might have some feelings. There's a lot of weird information out there. And
yeah.
So I will make good on my promise. And I did have a black belt and a brown belt tell me they'd be happily escort me to other said gyms. I doubt anybody even knows me. I'm not, but it was a heated, thing.
Yeah, it was for sure.
So, but anyway, I am hearing from at least the gyms that are reaching out to me for training, and other people that, people are continuing to try to evolve. And I think there also, though, there's for some gyms, there's kind of a backlash on some of it too. What is the words? Make jujitsu tough again, or I don't know, something to that effect, where they're like, let's stop catering to the weakest link, and we're gonna like, we want the real warriors in here. Anyway, I know that they're out there too, where they're going the other direction. And that's fine. I'm not, there's room for everybody. I have to tell you, even at my school, there's a gentleman that, he was pretty aggressive and injured my ribs one day. And he's a law enforcement officer. Nothing against law enforcement officers. I have lots of police friends who are very gentle and considerate. But I've explained to when I told the teachers what happened, that I don't want him gone. I want him there. I just want caution put on who he can spar with. Right. I want him learning. I want him there, but maybe not have him with the, 13-year-old girl who just joined Master Cycle.
Right. Yeah.
Because I want him to have that opportunity too. And then I'm glad that he's there for the days that I want to like push myself into that space of like, no, let's keep it 100% real. If you were trying to attack me on the street, could I stay safe?
Yeah.
Right. So I think it goes right back to wanting the curriculum up front. I just want people to be upfront about what it is they're trying to achieve, and making sure that everybody's on the same page, so that we stay safe enough. Does that make sense? Absolutely
makes sense. Yeah. I think, the key, it all gets back down to communication. And, sometimes you have people who are great at jujitsu, but they're very poor communicators. And that's a recipe sometimes for disaster.
I do think some of the magic too of jujitsu, maybe a really good chunk of it actually in my mind, is the philosophy. And I think some of the best instructors I've experienced spend a lot of time talking, about the philosophy, the mindset, and then they give you the words that you need to communicate, to scale it back, or to talk about what your goals are for that day, or it's so amazing. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a meeting with a client who doesn't even train, and I'll see something like, manage the distance, manage the damage. We're talking about somebody they shouldn't be around too much. Right.
It's true though.
Right. Language skills. It's just some amazing metaphors that have come to me through my experience, and ability to communicate in ways I didn't know I needed. That was another description I loved. I saw a little while ago about trauma, because a lot of us are living in it and with it, and we have no idea that we're even living with it. And it's not until somebody comes along and opens the box and says, hey, do you want to come out? Do you realize you were even in a box? Which it relates to another experience I had one day. I had to go to an event right after training, And, I don't wear dresses that often. And,
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of required to wear a dress for this occasion. And so I showered, got my dress on, and then I walked out to the front lobby. And there were a couple gentlemen there, and they gave me the once over.
Mm.
Right. And they
Yeah.
weren't trying to be gross about it. I think they were just kind of startled to even see me in a dress. They're like, wait a minute, is that Anna? Are you all right? Um, but it was funny in that moment, I realized, wait a minute, I'm not uncomfortable. It was so weird. It like flashed to my head that at any other occasion in my, where I'd been wearing dresses before my jujitsu training, if a man looked at me, I literally would find any excuse I could to exit the room as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like make sure they weren't looking at me. There was something about it. It was like a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But that day I was perfectly comfortable. I'm like, look all you want, homie. Like if you got anything, yeah, let's
Yeah.
go. I'll kick your butt in my dress. Like follow me out to the parking lot. I dare you. I'm just kidding, but
Yeah.
well, kind of. But it was a weird experience. I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. I'm comfortable in a dress. Wow. Wow. So that was like a box I was in that I didn't know I was even in.
Hmm.
And shoulders back, head up. I don't need to curl myself up and run out of the room or, not make eye contact with the exact opposite. I see you. I see you in your eyeballs. But anyway, really just so many good experiences. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's just the school vibe that the instructors put out where I train,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just telling you, so much support. I'm injured. I've had so many injuries. Oh my goodness. Not necessarily even from jujitsu, just, outside life from lifting weights and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And people are more protective over my body than I am. And
Mm-hmm.
with the black belt the other day, he's like, no, Anna, you're using your arms. Stop that. He's like, oh, you're scaring me. Like, move this way. I don't want to. Oh, so much love.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much love. I've experienced more love on the mats than I think I have anywhere else in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So much care for my ability to stay safe and to take care of my body and all the checking in. Was that okay for you? Is this too much pressure? More or less, what do you want to do today? What are your goals? What do you want to focus on? Just so many words of invitation and validation and encouragement. Oh my God, I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you for training with me.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a phenomenal experience. And I want it for so many more people out there. And so, yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Hey, I mean, that's the best advertisement I can think of for jujitsu right there. I mean, really finding that school that you vibe with, that it's kind of like a family where, you just get to, have fun, learn techniques that can absolutely save your life in a moment of crisis, but it's being learned in a way that it's respectful and it honors you, honors your ability to make choices, and just, I don't know. I love it. You love it. And I'm right there with you. I hope more people find it as an empowering tool, that if they have survived trauma, that they can use it as a way to take back that power, take back that choice. I don't know. I just can't say more positive things about this book. I loved it, read it, I think 2 times. So love it to death.
You.
But
really appreciate that.
Is there anything you want the listeners to know before we log off, or any big projects coming up to be on the lookout for?
I just said I do customized trainings for anybody that's looking for it. I have this menu of things that I can talk about, and they can cherry pick what they want, and whether they need me there in person or just virtually is fine. I'm just really eager to be a part of the solution and help get out good information. Or if there's somebody else, other clinicians out there doing research, if they need anybody to help partner with them, more than happy to support that. But I think overall, for everybody out there, I just want to encourage people to have fun. I feel like I mean, even separate from jujitsu for many years, working with adults, I feel like people have forgotten how to have fun. That you become an adult and you just, you get in your beige box and, do what you're supposed to, and you've forgotten how to play. And I think jujitsu helped me really kind of take that to the next level of, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This is how you play. This is what playful looks like. This is having friends in all walks of life, like you said. I'm in all walks. Women, men, old, young, doctors, lawyers, janitors, everybody. And it's such a beautiful place, at least at my school. I mean, you walk in, everybody's on the same level. There's no hierarchy. There's no politics. There's just, let's take care of each other and learn some cool techniques and have a whole lot of fun and laughs. So it's the humanistic side of me that says, just learn how to play and laugh at your mistakes and yeah, find that inner child of yours again and nurture them and love them and ask them what they need. And yeah, they may need days off the mat too. But yeah, go check it out. And if anybody, needs help understanding what to seek in a school, I can have a, private talk with them, just be normal session situation with me. And, I can give them the best of my 2 cents on what they should be looking for, or how to stay safe, or how to build that language and asking what you need for, or whatever. Or, I've had instructors call me, I've been triggered. I've been doing this for like 10 years. I can't believe now I'm having a heart attack on the mats. And
jeez.
So then I'm like, oh, well, you're in another state, so I can't treat you, but let me tell you what to look for in a therapist. And this is what I'm thinking that you might want to do together with them. And this is what you should ask for. And just go, it's wonderful. The orange popped up finally. So let's take care of it. Let's get the electrical charge off of that baby and get you back on the mats. And you've had an amazing learning experience that's going to help you spot other people who are triggered and help them through it too. So anyway, I just can't thank you enough for hosting this podcast and for, being another female powerful competitor out there doing the thing. At 51, I have absolutely zero interest in competing.
Oh, you can get out there. Absolutely. Go wreck the division. Come on.
Maybe after some, ligament healing for the next year. But yeah, I don't have any goals other than to play. I'm taking it slow and steady. So,
hey man, that sounds like a plan. Well, thank you so much for your time and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge on the topic. And just have a great rest of your day.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye.